On BBC London tonight, a special programme on knife crime and a look at what's being done in the fight to reduce it across the capital. We're at the premiere of a new film which counts the cost of carrying a knife, written and starring young Londoners. Plus,
we've got a scenario where someone's been stabbed and we're asking them to try and find out where the person's been stabbed.
The NHS team on the front line. We follow a specialist nurse trying to turn lives around in hospital and in the community. And on the road with the police officers cracking down on crime. The Met say they're frustrated at the rise in knife offences, but that their tactics are working. Good evening and welcome to Wood Green, where tonight we have a special programme looking at one of the most pressing issues facing the capital, knife crime. At this cinema tonight, young people are beginning to arrive for the premiere of 3 films they've made about the issue. Their aim is simple: to stop people picking up knives by showing the dire consequences. We'll be speaking to some of them in a moment, as well as hearing from the NHS, the police and community projects about what they're doing to tackle the issue. But first, let's take a look at a few clips from the film.
What? Hold him, bro! Hold him!
Mum, are you okay?
Okay, babe. Fine. Go back to bed, yeah?
Well, it is difficult to watch. These films are incredibly hard-hitting, and we can speak now to some of the young people who helped produce, write and act in them. Layla, Ronnie and Jordan. Layla, I'll start with you. I mean, these films show this issue from a number of different perspectives. Why was it so important for you to make this film?
I felt like this is just such a big issue and it's been going on for so long. You know, I have personal experiences myself where the house that I live in, opposite that house, somebody got attacked for misidentity and got stabbed to death. And you think that could have been you, that could have been your family, that could have been anyone who you know. And so I think this is the time for it to completely stop. And even though this may not stop right now, maybe this could be the start to it.
Ronnie, I know that you were an actor in the film, but you were able to draw on some very personal experiences, weren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like acting in the film enabled me to sort of reach into them personal experiences and really like try and find that emotion and
because
bring
you know
it out
someone
in
that
the
was
film.
stabbed and you drew on that in your performance.
Yeah, it targets you in a way where you just don't know what to do, and the film really draws in on that, and it enabled me to just express that in the film and just...
And you play a girlfriend in the film, and that's not really the perspective we hear of very often. Somebody who's really on the periphery of these events but then gets really caught up in it, and you were keen to highlight that. Yeah, definitely. It's because it's something that we don't draw in on. Like, knife crime doesn't just target the victim, it targets everybody around that, and it's so much of a personal experience that it's hard to explain. I know you're also an actor in this. Why was it so important to you that this came from young people?
Many films based on this topic have been made, and they've been almost like the government or the council, whoever, have been the voice of these films. But us being able, you know, as young people who live in the, you know, borough, who are from these areas, who have grown up seeing these things, us having a voice is, we're able to, like, you know, speak for these people who are, you know, part of gangs, who are going through these things. And it's like almost understand, instead of going against them, we cannot understand them in a type of way that, you know, the older generation or the council, whoever, won't understand them. So we're able to be that voice that has always been blocked out. And for us to create this film, just a great opportunity.
Well, it has a great authenticity to it. I know you did it with the help of the Met Police and with Haringey Council, but it's very much from you guys. And we heard there the sense that this has to be about young people, that they have to form part of the solution to all of this, and with good reason. Many of the victims of knife crime are under 25, and last year, one of those who was killed was Tashan Daniel. He was killed in Hillingdon, and his best friend, Leon Hack, has driven a programme to try and reduce knife crime ever since. He's been campaigning on the issue, and we asked him to tell us about Tashan and why this issue is so pressing.
This is my best friend Tashan. We grew up like brothers. He was loyal, the most positive person in the room, and he was a full-time professional athlete. His dreams were to go to the Olympic Games, compete at the highest level, and I believe he would have broken records. But those dreams were shattered because on the 24th of September, I lost my best friend. He was stabbed to death at Hillingdon Tube Station.
Nobody in this world is going to have a bad word to say about Tashan. No one. And you would try hard to find anybody that would dislike him because he is the perfect kid. Shock. You know, kids just shouldn't be happening. Shouldn't be happening. Sorry.
He was one of 154 people killed last year. He'll never be just a statistic to me. But the number of people who have died paints a dark picture of the situation in London right now. 94 people were killed with a knife in 2019. 59 of the victims were under 25, like Tashan, who had just turned 20. The total number of knife offences went up from 14,680 in 2018 to 15,546 in 2019. Poverty, domestic violence, gangs and drugs all played a part. And in others, people were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, like my best friend.
Well, thanks to Leon Hack for sharing Tashan's story. And sadly, the number of people affected by knife crime is going up all the time. In the early hours of this morning, a 24-year-old man was killed in Croydon. Another life lost, another police investigation begun. And of course, the Metropolitan Police are very much on the front line of tackling this issue. Earlier last month, they announced a surge of activity, that extra officers would be brought in to try and flood hotspots, to try and get a grip on this problem. I spent some time with them and started out with the Violent Crime Task Force on the hunt for gangs in North East London.
We are mainly focusing on gang members. We've got two gangs competing against each other, primarily for drug trade and areas for drug trade. And the outcome of that is gun and knife crime. We've got a 16-year-old male driver who's got obviously no licence and no insurance. He has been arrested for taking a vehicle without consent of the owner or taking and driving away.
These aren't the violent offenders they were looking for, but the officers hope the arrests might prevent future trouble.
We've got young guys who may not yet have kind of been pulled into the gang world that they have in this area, although driving around in a stolen car with the three of them, they're potentially on that kind of brink that they could move towards it. But hopefully this kind of interaction with us, we can get them into a youth team, we can speak to their parents, we'll hopefully pull them away from that and maybe make a difference.
Preventing young lives being drawn into criminality is the goal, but the London-wide increase in knife offences last year means catching those already offending is the most pressing challenge.
We're using slightly different tactics of where we position our teams to target certain areas. The violent crime problems we've had, the knife crime problems we've had have got to such a level that this solution isn't going to happen straight away. So we are making efforts and I think having an effect, but it's just going to take time.
We're just going to put you in handcuffs, so I'll save you, mate. Okay.
But in Camden and Islington, they say they've already seen results. This borough started reallocating resources to focus on violence 18 months ago, and it's claiming a 30% reduction in knife crime injuries.
Rather than waiting for an area to develop into a crime hotspot, but tackling it pretty much overnight. So my day job, I'd come in, look at the overnight trends for the last 24 hours in terms of violence and robbery, and task people into those areas immediately to prevent them becoming longer-term hotspots.
He's now got an extra 10 officers to focus on violence from the 100-strong uplift announced by the Met last month, with increasing numbers of knives being stashed in playgrounds to avoid discovery during stop and search. Today's job is a weapons sweep.
There's 3 of them found.
They find a bag of stolen mobile phones. Given that the overall number of knife offences is not going down, despite the Met repeatedly saying this is our top priority, how can you be confident that the tactics you're using are going to work?
Because we absolutely are making inroads in areas into violence. As I say, under 25, violence with injury, gun crime is coming down. We absolutely know that we're facing some challenges. We can't do it alone. We're working very closely with partners and communities to tackle some of the underlying issues that drive violence.
But when it's too late for prevention, it's communities which feel the force of the law. In Haringey and Enfield, 58 men were arrested after a 9-month investigation into robbery, organised crime and drug dealing. This 16-year-old was sleeping with a knife in his bed.
You take this guy off the streets, maybe a couple more today, and others come in and fill their place.
And that's why it's so important that we work with our partners to try and prevent, divert and discourage this type of activity. So getting into schools, working with local youth clubs, all of that engagement activity to try and prevent this happening in the first place. It has to be a long-term approach, it's a long-term plan. I accept what you say that for this individual, you know, it's got to a point where he's been arrested, but that doesn't stop us trying to prevent the next sort of generation of young people up and coming to try and move them away from these lifestyle choices that these young people are making at the moment.
Someone stop taking photos. Well, the police, they're very clear that they can't tackle this problem alone and that they have to work with communities. So let's speak now to 2 people who are trying to work in their communities in their own ways. Firstly, Yvonne Lawson, you lost your son Godwin back in 2010. We are very much trying to focus on the solutions tonight, but did you think more would have changed in the decade since his death?
I mean, in 2010, when Godwin died, I never once imagined that knife crime would escalate to this level. And it's heartbreaking, it's horrifying to know that it has actually risen, I think, 10 times than it did in 2010.
And the work that you do now is very much rooted here in this community. This shopping centre that we're in contributes to the foundation that you now run in Godwin's name. What do you think is the most important work you do? What is working?
What is working at the moment is just the early intervention prevention. I think that's really key to everything we do, trying to catch those young people that are at risk before they get into criminality. Because I mean, it's always best to prevent than cure. So we work very closely with the schools and the colleges, and we pinpoint and highlight those young people that are likely to be involved in criminality, and we go and do really tailored intervention with them, such as self-esteem, conflict resolution, how they can actually say no and walk away because of the greatness they have in them. So we really try and build on the soft skills that they have to make them...
Saying no is so hard for a young person, isn't it?
I mean, it takes a lot of skills and it takes a lot of development, and I think parents have got a role to play, the community has got a role to play to get this holistic person, well confidence, that would have that confidence in them to say, I don't want to be part of this, criminality. I've got greatness in me and I want to sort of achieve.
Farron, Paul, I mean, you try and bring out that greatness in young people. You organise knife amnesties. Tell us how that works.
So, young people get in touch with me, and if they've got weapons that they no longer want and they want to get rid of, I'll be that person they go to, and I'd go and collect that. And as of recently, I've been talking to organisations that's been recycling down used weapons and weapons that's no longer wanted, and into making like jewellery. And I'm now speaking to someone about melting them down into knives, down into watches. I've also been running a programme. I've been working closely with Enfield Council, Linda Crawford at Enfield Youth Offenders, along with Janet Evans.
does take a range of people, doesn't it?
It does.
To help. I mean, this is something that no one person can do alone, but also the people intervening have to be credible. That's definitely one of the problems the police have.
Well, that's why I believe that they may need people like us and the local authorities, the youth offending services, the youth services, that we have to come together and create a bridge where the younger children can talk to organisations and people that can help them in order to get them on a better path which they need to live. And when I'm working with people like Idris Elba, I have to say it because he's going out of his way and he's going around doing knife campaigns with many different knife charities in order to raise money and awareness for them. So I think high-profile people in organisations, local authorities, it's going to be people like that that really have to work together to get down and actually tackle the problems
There
in
are
the community.
so many projects going on. We could talk about that all evening, but of course, trying to bring those programmes together is key, trying to bring a coherent strategy, and part of the work that is done by the Violence Reduction Unit at City Hall, and of course taking on this problem and the policing, being in charge of the policing surround it, is going to be the job of one of the new mayor who's going to be elected in May. We've been speaking to some of the candidates standing about the issue of knife crime.
I've been listening to young people and communities for many years, and I would say I'll never stop listening to our young people.
I've been a youth worker for 25 years. The public health approach isn't new to me. What we need to add to that now is to get young people in a future that they can see.
I was a young Londoner who benefited from a youth club raised on a council estate, who now is the mayor of this great city. I want other young Londoners to have the same opportunities.
It was young people who first raised the alarm to me in 2016 that their youth centres were closing, and we owe them every single penny we can find.
And you can see more on that on our website, where there's a full list of candidates intending to stand for mayor. Take a look at our special live page too, looking at knife crime across the capital. Well, something that politicians and other authorities can agree on is that this takes a multi-agency approach, everyone working together. And someone who's been an advocate for that for a very long time is Martin Griffiths. You're a trauma surgeon, and last year you were given the role of NHS lead for violence reduction. Explain what that means.
Well, it's a really, really fantastic opportunity for us in the NHS to recognise our role in reducing violence in our community. What it's enabled me to do is to link together all the great stakeholders within the NHS, all the practitioners, to provide operational strategic leadership for our community to deliver a violence reduction programme which is trauma-informed and evidence-based. It's absolutely fantastic.
And you felt so encouraged to do this because you were seeing very, very young people on the operating table.
I think everybody who works in trauma care recognises that we see an awful lot of young people who are injured and penetrating trauma for no reason. And there are things we can do to support our young people in our society to make them healthier and happier. Violence reduction is part of that package of measures, and I'm absolutely passionate about delivering great care.
We talk a lot about young people, but we know that there are so many other issues that feed into this problem of knife crime. And of course, domestic violence is one of them. Many of the victims are victims of domestic violence, and it's also part of the trauma that can contribute to people committing crimes in the first place. And you try and deal with all of that, don't you?
The NHS recognises that violence comes from multiple sources, and we have programmes and agencies designed to support all groups in this difficult situation. We've done a huge amount of work with domestic abuse. We've had some fantastic results of our programmes, and it's a really, really strong piece of our programme.
Are you feeling more and more backup for it across London from the authorities? Because you started out kind of doing this a bit on your own, but now it seems to be gathering momentum.
I was talking to my programme lead, Sinead Durbin, today about this. We are so enthused by the support and the overwhelming positivity we had from all the stakeholders, from law enforcement, from the mayor, from the VIU, Liv Peck and the great team there, from education, and from all the NHS family. And the community are talking to us, listening to us, and they're sharing their experiences. It's an absolutely fantastic time for us.
Well, I know that a lot of the work is done by your violence reduction nurses. They work in the hospitals and also out in the community. And we were lucky enough to spend some time with one of them who showed us what his role entails.
My name's Michael Carver. I'm the lead nurse for violence reduction at Barts Health NHS Trust. This is a Saturday night at the Royal London Hospital. What do they need? A young man who's been stabbed in the leg, so we're just going to put an advanced trauma call out to get the team here. Across the board, what we often forget about is the human being at the other side of that and what someone might be going through. Obviously, a lot of the time these are young adults, but we get 15-year-olds in here with these injuries. Advanced adult trauma team to A&E Resus. Thanks. One thing that's never really changed has been the volume of young people, appallingly young people coming through with really terrible injuries. I've got vivid memories of cutting school uniforms off people with stab wounds. And as a senior nurse, sometimes it's my job to visit the families in that area and give them the bad news. Resus charge nurse speaking. So a nurse typically might be expected to work within a hospital, but actually my work goes outside the hospital. We're making our way to a local community centre where we're going to be meeting a group of young people.
Come on, man! Come on! It's gonna die!
We've got a scenario where someone's been stabbed and we're asking them to try and find out where the person's been stabbed.
Need help, please! He's leaking out! Emergency!
If it was before, I wouldn't just call the ambulance straight away, I wouldn't help them or do anything. But now we know what to do, step by step, to help the person have the best chance of surviving.
Basically, a year ago, I got into a little incident. I was bleeding out, and then after, a lot of the people around me helped, and then it just opened my eyes that it's really dangerous around on the streets.
So, let's get us an Uber, eh? Just making me out to be a millennial. Can't get off my phone. Hello, mate. Good, thank you. How are you? Well, Waltham Forest needs more resources, and we recognise that, and that's part of why we're going today to see what we can do to implement something here. Here's absolutely fine, mate. I'm sure we can find the entrance. Here for the Violence Reduction Partnership meeting. To put it into perspective, at the Royal London Hospital, we see on average around 700 knife and gunshot injuries per year. Around 2/3 of them are aged under the age of 25. The youngest that we had as an attendance was 13. I think they're really keen to get some partnership work going on with Whipps Cross Hospital. And this is just the start of a conversation.
All change, all change.
If you hark back to the works of Charles Dickens and Oliver Twist, you look at the criminality, the violence, the deprivation, the sadness that goes on within a book that's 150 years old. And a really stark thing that I see every day is actually these kinds of worlds still exist.
So they can be released more quickly. So there is stuff we can do as well. So we don't have officers sat there.
I think when I started, a knife was like the end point, and it's now they're properly trying to kill each other. So the type of wounds we're seeing are deeper and more savage.
Michael Carver.
How are you? Really good to see you again. Those under the age of 18 are being hurt during the day. It's not an evening event. So we can actually pinpoint areas of harm, which are often the route between school and home. We're in an environment that has lots of problems and not that many resources. So how do we use the resource we've got better? How do we work together? But also, are there new jobs we need to make? Are there new roles we need to make that can make less work for everyone and also do a better job?
Just some of the great work going on inside the NHS there. Well, this premiere is about to begin. We can speak now again to our filmmakers. Jordan, what's the one thing that you hope young people will take away from this film?
It just shows what happens next after you commit that crime. That big reputation you thought you had, this film clearly shows how easy, it rips away based on that, easy way out motive you went through. And how, it doesn't only affect you as a suspect, but it leaves a mark on the family, your loved ones, and it's a mark that is very hard to wipe away.
Well, congratulations for getting to this point. Almost time for us to say goodbye from Wood Green, but now let's get a look at the weather with Ben Rich.
Thank you very much, Catherine. A very good evening to you. There's something on the way that we haven't seen much of so far this winter. There's a bit of snow in our forecast. Not for everyone. As we head through tonight and into tomorrow, it's rain and sleet for many, but for some, there is going to be some snow. This is the area of low pressure responsible running across the south of the UK, and it's on the northern flank of that low where we are going to see a mixture of sleet and snow. So dry out there at the moment for the most part, but cloud amounts will increase, and then we'll see outbreaks of rain spreading from the southwest, and it's on the northern edge of that we're going to see snow starting to develop. With temperatures of 1, 2, 3 degrees, it's always going to be a little bit awkward to predict whether we're going to get rain, sleet or snow. It's all quite marginal, but it looks most likely that it'll be the north of our region, the northern home counties, that will see a bit of snow. There's a Met Office yellow warning in force. Could well be a covering of a few centimetres over the Chilterns, but even at lower levels, could get some slushy snow for a time tomorrow morning. So it could be a slightly tricky rush hour. It will be mostly rain, I think, to the south of London, and whether you get wintry weather or wet weather, it will clear away as we move through into the afternoon to leave dry weather, some spells of sunshine, temperatures between 6 and 8 degrees. It will feel quite chilly in the northwesterly breeze. Now, a brief quieter interlude through Thursday night and into Friday, but you can see frontal systems approaching from the west. This time it's going to be rain, so cloud amounts increasing very quickly during Friday morning. Then we see this wet weather sliding its way in, that rain turning increasingly heavy from the south through the latter part of the day. Temperatures of 6 to 9 degrees. It's going to be really wet for a time on Friday night into Saturday. A showery weekend and a windy weekend in prospect too. Catherine, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. Well, as you can see, the foyer has suddenly begun to empty out now. The premiere is about to start. It will be a difficult watch, but it is, of course, a very important one. This issue of knife crime is going to continue to dominate the politics of London. It's NHS, it's police, and its communities for time to come. But tonight we have at least tried to look at some of the work that's being done to combat it. Assad will be here tonight at 10:30, looking more at this issue, as well as some other news.